I stared at the text message on my phone, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Your mother is moving in with us next month. Non-negotiable. This is what a real man does for his family. That was from Brandon, my husband of 12 years, sent at 2:47 a.m. while I was sleeping. I read it again, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood, but the words didn't change. His mother, Linda, the woman who once told me my cooking would never be as good as a real woman's, was moving into our 3-bedroom suburban home in Columbus, Ohio. Just like that. No discussion, no warning, just an ultimatum wrapped in the language of duty and manhood. I felt something crack inside my chest, a sharp, physical pain that made it hard to breathe. This wasn't how marriages worked. Or at least, this wasn't how ours was supposed to work. We had rules, agreements, a whole life built on compromise and communication. But those rules apparently didn't apply to Brandon's mother. I set the phone down on the nightstand and lay there in the dark, listening to Brandon snore beside me, trying to understand how we'd gotten to this point. But to really understand, I need to take you back. Back to when things were good. Back to when I actually believed we had something solid. 3 years earlier, life felt like a perfectly arranged Pinterest board. Our home was a charming 1970s ranch-style house with white shutters and a wraparound porch. We'd bought it for $385,000 when the market was still reasonable, and we'd spent the last decade making it ours. The kitchen had new granite countertops, my pride and joy, and I'd painted the master bedroom a soft sage green that Brandon said looked like a spa. We had 2 cars, both paid off, and a 401k that was actually growing. I worked as a dental hygienist at Riverside Family Dentistry, earning solid money with benefits. Brandon was a project manager at a construction company, pulling in around $95,000 a year. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. More than comfortable. Our life had rhythm. Coffee together on weekend mornings while we planned the week. Date nights every other Friday at the Italian place downtown. Sunday dinners with friends. I'd finally convinced Brandon to let me adopt a rescue dog, a nervous pit bull mix named Daisy, and she'd transformed into this goofy, loving creature who followed me from room to room. Brandon would pretend to complain about her shedding, but I caught him giving her treats when he thought I wasn't looking. We didn't have kids, which was a choice we'd made together. Both our careers were demanding, and honestly, we liked our freedom. We could take spontaneous weekend trips to the lake. We could stay out late without worrying about babysitters. We had nieces and nephews to spoil and then send home. It felt like the best of both worlds. Brandon's mother, Linda, lived about 30 minutes away in a nice senior community called Oakwood Ridge. She had her own condo, her own life, her own friends in the book club and the exercise classes. She visited maybe once a month, usually for Sunday dinner. She'd bring a casserole that she'd clearly bought from the grocery store deli, but claimed she'd made from scratch. We'd eat, make small talk, and then she'd leave. It was pleasant enough, if a little strained. Linda had never quite warmed to me. I suspected she thought I'd stolen her son, that if I hadn't come along, Brandon would have been content living in her basement, doing her yard work, and letting her control every aspect of his life. But that was fine. I had my own mother, Patricia, who lived in Cincinnati and who actually liked me. We'd call every Sunday. She'd ask about my job, about Brandon, about the house. She'd send me recipes and birthday cards early. She respected that I was a grown woman with my own life. Linda did things differently. "How was your mother's visit?" I asked Brandon one Sunday evening in early 2021, as we cleaned up after dinner. "Fine. She seemed a little stressed about something, but she didn't want to talk about it," he said, rinsing plates. "Probably just the usual stuff. Her condo fees went up. Someone at her book club wasn't nice to her. You know how she is." I did know. Linda was the type of woman who could find something to worry about on the sunniest day. But I didn't think much of it. Then, about 2 weeks later, Brandon came home from work looking strange, pale, distracted. He went straight to his home office and closed the door. When I knocked and asked if everything was okay, He said he just had some work to catch up on. But he didn't emerge until nearly midnight. We barely spoke. He went to bed without his usual kiss goodnight. The next morning at breakfast, I asked him directly, "Brandon, what's going on? You've been weird for 2 days." He looked at me over his coffee cup, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes that I didn't recognize. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "My mom called me yesterday," he said slowly. "Her condo is being sold. The development is converting to a rental community. All the owners have to sell or leave. She needs a place to go." I felt my stomach tighten. Okay, does she have savings? Can she buy another place or rent somewhere? She has some money, but not much. The real estate market is crazy right now. She's scared, Ashley. She's alone and she doesn't know what to do. I put my coffee mug down carefully. I could see where this was heading, and I needed to choose my words with precision. "Brandon, I understand that's scary for her, but she's a capable woman. She's 68 years old. She's been managing her own finances for years. I already told her she could stay with us for a while," he said, not looking at me. "Just until she figures things out." My throat went dry. "You what?" "Just for a few months, Ash." "A few months while she looks for a new place. What else am I supposed to do? Let my mother be homeless?" "That's not what I'm saying, and you know it. But Brandon, you can't just make that decision without talking to me first. This is my home too. We need to discuss this together." He set his mug down with more force than necessary. "So what? I'm supposed to tell my mother that my wife won't let her stay with us? That we have room, we have the means, but we're too selfish to help?" There it was, the weaponization of kindness. The implication that saying no to something I hadn't agreed to made me a bad person. "That's not fair," I said quietly, "and you know it." But his jaw was set in that way I recognized, the way that meant he'd already made up his mind and was just going through the motions of letting me think I had a say. "She's moving in next month," he said. "I've already promised her." And just like that, my comfortable life tilted on its axis. Linda moved in on a gray Saturday in September 2021, and I watched from the kitchen window as Brandon and his brother Derek carried box after box into our guest room. She'd sold her condo for $240,000, less than she'd hoped. And after putting down a deposit on a new place that fell through, she'd decided to stay with us temporarily. That was 14 months ago. The first few weeks were manageable. Linda kept to herself mostly, helped with dishes, and even made a decent pot roast. But by November, the temporary arrangement had calcified into permanent. She rearranged the living room furniture without asking. She started grocery shopping and filling the fridge with her brands, her foods, her preferences. She'd wake up at 5 a.m. and run the vacuum, the coffee maker, the washing machine. Loud, aggressive sounds that shattered the quiet mornings I'd loved. When I asked her gently if she could wait until later, she said, "I'm just trying to help, Ashley. Some of us believe in getting an early start." By spring of 2022, I was suffocating in my own home. The breaking point came in late April during a Tuesday evening dinner. I'd made Brandon's favorite, grilled salmon with asparagus and lemon, and we were eating in the dining room when Linda announced that she'd decided to stay permanently. "I've decided the condo market is too unpredictable," she said, cutting into the salmon with her usual aggressive precision. "It's smarter for me to stay here. You have the space. Brandon needs his mother around. And frankly, I'm too old to be starting over." I set my fork down carefully. "Linda, we've talked about this being temporary. We love having you, but—" "No, you don't," she said flatly. "You've made it very clear you resent my presence. But Brandon is my son, and he wants me here. Don't you, Brandon?" He was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. "Mom, we said we'd discuss this as a family." "We are discussing it," Linda said. "I'm discussing it. I'm telling you my plans. I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs. This isn't how this works. Brandon, tell her. But he didn't. He just sat there, and in that silence, I understood something fundamental. He wasn't going to stand up to his mother. He never had. He never would. That night, after Linda went to bed, I confronted him in our bedroom. "That's it," I said quietly. "I can't do this anymore. Your mother needs to find her own place. We gave her time. We've been generous. But I'm not living the rest of my life as a guest in my own home." "She has nowhere to go," Brandon said, his voice rising. "You want me to throw my mother out on the street?" "I want you to be a partner to me instead of a son who can't cut the umbilical cord," I shot back. "There's a difference." "Maybe this was a mistake," he said coldly. "Maybe I made a mistake marrying someone so cold." The words hung in the air between us. Cold. As if wanting boundaries in my own marriage made me heartless. "I'm sleeping in the guest room," he said, and he left. For 3 weeks, we barely spoke. He'd come home from work, say hello to Linda, eat whatever dinner I'd prepared, and disappear into his office or the garage. The weight of his silence was suffocating. I started staying late at the dentist's office, picking up extra appointments, anything to avoid coming home. Then, in May, I discovered something that changed everything. I was looking for Brandon's work schedule. He had a client meeting coming up, and I wanted to add it to our shared calendar when I opened his laptop. The screen was still on, and I saw an email thread that made my blood run cold. The subject line read, "Mom's living situation, financial planning." The most recent email was from Linda to Brandon, sent 3 days earlier. "I've been thinking, and I really do need to stay with you long term. The money from the condo sale won't last forever, and honestly, I'm not comfortable being alone. I've also been looking at my finances, and I'm worried about my retirement. You and Ashley have this nice house, and I'm thinking maybe we could look into putting my name on the deed. That way, if something happens to me, there's no legal confusion. Plus, it might help with my taxes." My hands started shaking. I scrolled back through the thread. Brandon had been discussing his mother's finances with her for months. Months. Without telling me. There were emails about her credit score, her 401k, her medical bills. And then, from Brandon to Linda, "Let me talk to Ashley about the deed situation. I think it might be possible." He had never mentioned any of this to me. Not a word. I heard the garage door open and my stomach dropped. Brandon was home early. I closed the laptop quickly, my mind racing through what I'd just read. The deed. His mother wanted her name on our deed. And Brandon was considering it. When he walked into the kitchen, I forced myself to stay calm. "Hey," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "How was work?" "Fine," he said, not meeting my eyes. He went straight to the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. "Brandon, we need to talk," I said carefully. "About your mother staying here." "Not now, Ashley. I'm tired." "Yes, now," I said, and something in my tone must have registered, because he turned to face me. "I think we should talk to a lawyer about our options. For her, I mean. About her housing situation. About what arrangements make sense legally and financially." His face went pale. "Why would we need a lawyer?" "Because," I said, choosing my words with extreme precision, "I want to make sure we're protecting ourselves and our property. And I think it would be good to have professional advice." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew. "I'm going to call my attorney tomorrow," I continued. "We should probably have a conversation about our assets and our will while we're at it, just to be thorough." "Ashley, in fact," I interrupted, my voice ice cold now, "I'm going to talk to her about what happens if someone tries to put their name on a property without the knowledge and consent of both owners." The color drained completely from his face. "You read my emails," he said. It wasn't a question. "Your laptop was open," I said. "And I'm very glad I did, because it appears my husband has been discussing the deed to my house, our house, the one I helped buy and maintain and pay for, with his mother, without me. So yes, I read them. And now we're going to have a very serious conversation about what happens next." He slumped into a kitchen chair. "It's not what it sounds like," he said weakly. "Really? Because it sounds like you were considering putting my home at legal and financial risk for a woman who is perfectly capable of renting an apartment or buying a condo in a different market. It sounds like you've been lying to me for months. It sounds like you value your mother's comfort more than your wife's security." "That's not true," he whispered. "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Explain it to me. Make me understand how any of this is acceptable." He didn't answer. He just sat there, staring at his beer bottle like it might contain the words he couldn't find. I went to bed alone that night. The next morning, I called my attorney. Her name was Jennifer Castellano, and she was one of the most no-nonsense lawyers in Columbus. I'd met her at a dental conference 2 years earlier, and we'd stayed in touch. When I told her what I'd discovered, there was a long silence on the phone. "He was discussing putting her name on the deed?" she asked. "According to the email, yes." "And he never discussed this with you?" "Never." "Okay," Jennifer said, her voice taking on that sharp, professional edge I remembered. "Here's what you need to know. If he had actually done that without your consent, it would have been fraud. You could have pursued legal action. But the fact that he was just discussing it, planning it, that tells me he knows he needs your permission, which means some part of him knows he shouldn't be doing this." "So what do I do?" I asked. "First, we protect your assets. I'm going to send you some documents. You're going to document everything, all communications about the deed, all financial conversations. You're going to open a separate bank account in your name only, if you don't have one already. And you're going to have a conversation with your husband about what your boundaries are, because if he's willing to do this, he's willing to do other things." Over the next week, I did exactly what Jennifer told me to do. I documented everything. I transferred a portion of my monthly paycheck into a new account at a different bank. I made copies of all the emails I'd found. And I steeled myself for the conversation I knew was coming. Brandon tried to have it on Friday night, after Linda had gone to bed. "I wasn't actually going to do it," he said, sitting across from me in the living room. "I was just thinking about it, exploring options. Exploring options that would have made my financial future dependent on your goodwill and your mother's mortality," I said flatly. "Brandon, do you understand how serious this is? Do you understand that you were considering committing fraud?" "I wasn't." "Yes, you were. Whether or not you intended to actually go through with it, you were discussing the legal mechanisms for adding her name to a property that is jointly owned without the knowledge and consent of the other owner. That's fraud." He flinched as if I'd hit him. "I've spoken to a lawyer," I continued. "I've documented everything. And I'm telling you right now that if you ever try something like this again, I will pursue every legal remedy available to me. I will protect myself and my assets. Is that understood?" "Are you threatening me?" he asked, his voice small. "I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." "What does that mean for us?" he asked. "For our marriage?" I took a breath. I'd been asking myself the same question all week. "It means we need to go to counseling. Real counseling, with a therapist who specializes in family dynamics and boundary setting, because you have a serious problem with your mother, and you're willing to sacrifice your marriage for her approval. That's not okay." He nodded slowly, and for a moment, I thought maybe he understood. Maybe this was the turning point. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, after our first counseling session, which Brandon spent mostly defending himself and his mother, I came home from work to find Linda sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of real estate listings. I've decided I'm going to look for a place nearby, she announced, as if this was her decision to make. Somewhere close enough that I can still see Brandon regularly. Maybe a townhouse. I found a few that are in my price range. I looked at Brandon, who was standing by the counter, and he gave me a small nod. A peace offering, I realized. He was trying. That sounds like a good plan, Linda, I said carefully. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't over. Men like Brandon, men who'd been conditioned their entire lives to prioritize their mother's comfort over everything else, didn't change in a few weeks of therapy. They changed when the consequences became unavoidable. And the consequences were about to become very, very unavoidable. In June, I discovered something else, something worse. I was paying the bills online when I noticed a charge I didn't recognize. $2,400 to something called Coastal Realty Trust. I asked Brandon about it, and he got defensive immediately. "It's nothing," he said. "Just an investment thing." "What kind of investment?" I pressed. "Something my mother suggested. It's fine." I called Jennifer that afternoon. "He's hiding something else," I told her. "There's a charge on our joint account that he won't explain." "Send me the details," she said. "Let me look into it." It took her 2 days to come back with an answer, and when she did, my worst fears were confirmed. "Your husband and his mother invested $2,400 in a real estate trust together," Jennifer said, "using money from your joint account, without your consent or knowledge." "They what?" I felt the room tilt. "And there's more. I pulled his credit report, with permission from our attorney-client relationship. This is legal. And he's opened 2 new credit cards in the last month. Both have balances. Together, they're at about $8,000. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. What did he buy? I can't tell from the statements, but given his pattern, I'd guess he's helping his mother financially. Ashley, this is escalating. This isn't just boundary issues anymore. This is financial infidelity. This is your husband taking on debt without your knowledge. That night, I confronted him in our bedroom while Linda was watching television downstairs. "The Coastal Realty Trust," I said coldly. "Explain." He went white. "How did you—" "My attorney looked into it. You opened 2 credit cards. You've spent $8,000 without telling me." "I was going to tell you," he said desperately. My mom needed help. The real estate market was looking good and she wanted to invest in this trust. It's a solid investment. It should pay off." "That's not the point," I said, my voice rising. "The point is that you lied to me. You spent our money we earned together, without my knowledge or consent. Do you understand what you've done?" "I was trying to help my mother," he said stubbornly. "And I'm trying to help my marriage," I shot back. "But you're making it impossible. You've lied to me repeatedly. You've hidden financial information. You've risked our home and our security for her benefit. At what point does this stop, Brandon? At what point do I become more important to you than she is?" He didn't answer. "I want her out," I said quietly. "I want her out of this house by the end of July. And I want you to get into individual therapy, not couples therapy. Therapy where you deal with your mother issues and your inability to set boundaries. If you don't, I'm filing for divorce." His face crumpled. "Ashley, please." "I'm serious," I said, and I was. "I've given you months to fix this. I've been patient. I've tried to be kind. But I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep you and your mother warm. So you have a choice. You choose this marriage, or you choose her. But you can't have both." I left the room and went to sleep in the guest room. Again. The next morning, something shifted. Brandon called his mother into the living room, and I listened from the hallway as he told her, in a voice I'd never heard him use before, that she needed to move out. "This is between you and your wife," Linda said coldly. "If she's pushing you out, that's her doing." "No, Mom," he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "This is me. I'm telling you that you need to find your own place. You have the money. You have the ability. And I can't let you destroy my marriage There was a long silence. "If you do this," Linda said quietly, "you'll regret it. You'll choose a woman over your own mother." "I'm choosing my wife," he said, "which is what I should have done from the start." By early August, Linda had found a small cottage about 15 minutes away. Brandon and I helped her move. The process was tense and uncomfortable, but it was necessary. As she carried the last box into her new place, she turned to me and said, "I hope you're happy now. You finally got what you wanted." I didn't respond. What could I say? That I'd never wanted her gone? I'd wanted my husband to respect me? That the only winner in this situation was her, because she'd gotten him to prove exactly what he was willing to do? But something else happened in those weeks after she left. Brandon started to wake up. He went to individual therapy twice a week. He read books about enmeshment and codependency. He apologized to me, really apologized, not the defensive half apologies I'd gotten before. He admitted that he'd been wrong, that he'd prioritized his mother's comfort over his wife's needs, that he'd been emotionally unavailable because he'd never learned how to be his own person separate from her. "I think I've been scared my whole life," he told me one evening, sitting on the porch while Daisy napped between us. "Scared that if I didn't do what my mom wanted, she wouldn't love me. And I translated that into my marriage. I thought, if I didn't do what my mom wanted, you wouldn't love me either." "That's not how love works," I said gently. "I know that now," he said. "I'm sorry it took me so long to figure it out." We decided to stay together, but not without conditions. We set up a family therapy appointment where a neutral third party could help us rebuild trust. We restructured our finances so that neither of us could make major purchases without discussing it first. We established clear boundaries with his mother. She was welcome for Sunday dinners and holidays, but only if she was respectful of our marriage. Linda, for her part, has been better. Not warm, not suddenly maternal toward me, but civil, respectful of our space. I suspect she's furious about what happened, but she's learned that her fury doesn't move mountains anymore. The real estate trust investment Brandon made? It tanked. They lost most of the $2,400. I won't lie and say I didn't feel a certain satisfaction when Brandon told me. We're still here in the house in Columbus, still working through our issues, still learning how to be a real partnership instead of two people with conflicting loyalties. Some days are harder than others, but at least now, when a decision needs to be made, we make it together. At least now, I know my marriage is the priority. At least now, I'm not suffocating in my own home. The greatest gift that whole nightmare gave me wasn't Brandon's reformation, though that's real and ongoing. It was the realization that I'm capable of standing up for myself, of protecting my own interests, of walking away if I need to. I learned that love shouldn't require self-annihilation. And I learned that the people we think we can't live without are sometimes exactly the ones we need to leave behind. Brandon still talks to his mother regularly, but he talks to me first now. And that, finally, makes all the difference.